Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So for the last couple of weeks I've been working on a couple of videos which I haven't finished yet. They're kind of close to being finished but not there yet. And things keep on popping up, and I've done finished some other videos in that time, and I'm once again putting them on hold for a short period of time because there's another article I want to go through, and I want to try to get this video finished and upload it by Sunday, just before the next episode, the final episode of Game of Thrones. Now the article is by Jessica Booth, and it's from Bustle, and it's called 17 Feminist Daenerys Targaryen Quotes from Game of Thrones That Are Proof She's Always Been the Greatest of All Time. Well, see, I didn't know that Daenerys was the greatest feminist of all time. So I didn't know she was trying to fight for equal pay, for equal work for females in Westeros. I didn't know that she was complaining about manspreading in horse and carts. I mean, it's a serious issue in Westeros. Those men are just taking up way too much space. And don't even get me started on the pink tax in Westeros. It's just out of fucking control. So clearly Daenerys is concerned about all these things and not obsessed with sitting on the Iron Throne. Now, before we get into the article, let me say that I'm a fan of the books and the TV show, and I have to say that Daenerys is one of my favourite characters, and the reason why is because she's a complex character, and she's not black or white, she's lots of shades of grey. And a lot of people were shocked with the second final episode of Game of Thrones, because she did a lot of evil shit, or things that could be considered evil. By the way, spoilers. I'm guessing everyone has seen that episode by now anyway. But yeah, she burnt a city to the ground needlessly, which is not something a hero does. But the point is, has Dany been a hero? And I would say yes and no. Like I said, she's a grey character, not a black or white character. It is true she's done a lot of good, like freeing the slaves in Meereen, all of Slaver's Bay, to be fair. But at the same time, she has been obsessed with sitting on the Iron Throne, and she is willing to do anything to get there, including killing tens of thousands of people in her way. I wouldn't consider that to be morally good. I'd put her in the same category as maybe Alexander the Great or Napoleon, who I'm guessing most people wouldn't consider great humanitarians. Now, undoubtedly, she does have a legal claim to the throne, well, at least until we found out who Jon's father was. But the bigger question is, does she have a moral right to the throne? Is it moral for a character to kill tens of thousands of people so she has the privilege of ruling a nation? Now, obviously, Game of Thrones is based on medieval history, and we can't judge them by the same standards we judge people today, but nor should we ignore her ambition and the consequences of those ambitions. And that's what Jessica Booth seems to be doing, as well as a lot of other people, it seems. So let's get stuck into the article and see exactly what Jessica has to say. Game of Thrones may have issues with its treatment of women characters. Yeah, it's just the women who are mistreated. Lucky there's no men who have been killed or slaughtered or had their genitals cut off, right? I mean, lucky there's not an entire army which has had their genitals cut off. That's fortunate. It's only the female characters which are mistreated. Or, I guess what Jessica's saying is it's only the female characters that count when they're harmed. She goes on to say, but one thing they've done right is introduce the world to Daenerys Targaryen. Daenerys, also known as Khaleesi, or Mother of Dragons, or about a million other names, may currently be portrayed on the series as a woman spiralling into tyranny and following into the murderous footsteps of her father, the Mad King. Well, I would say it's pointless whether she's male or female. It's the character that's important. she's not spiraling into tyranny because she's a woman. She's doing it because of her history and her life and the way the character has developed. It's got nothing to do with vagina or penis. But that's the real problem that this author has with the way Daenerys has been treated. It's the fact that Daenerys is female. And how dare you treat a female character this way? How dare you portray a female character who is not perfect? How dare you portray a female character who has shades of grey? What a terrible, terrible crime this is. It's almost as bad as mansplaining when you think about it. But let's continue. But everything we've seen of her throughout the past season totally goes against her being at all evil. Between seasons 1 and 7, we all got to know Dany as a powerful leader who, though certainly not perfect, who is anyway, is determined to use the power she knows she's owed to help make the world a better place, more equal place. The power she's owed, that's one of the problems though, isn't it? The fact that she thinks she's owed power. The fact that she thinks she has the right to rule Westeros. And like I said, she has a legal claim, well, had a legal claim until Jon popped up. But does she have the moral claim? Because she has the legal right to sit on the Iron Throne, does that mean she has the moral right to slaughter tens of thousands of people to get there? And does slaughtering tens of thousands of people to get there make her a good character? I think Jessica should be asking these questions. But, you know, she obviously hasn't delved that deep into it. All she sees is a powerful woman, and that means good, right? Don't have to look any deeper than that, do we, Jessica? And I find it very, very amusing that she says that she's making the world a more equal place. Do you know who Daenerys is, Jessica? She's a fucking queen, okay? She's a queen obsessed with sitting on the Iron Throne and subjugating people. And the people of Westeros, many of the people of Westeros, do not want to be subjugated to her. So how exactly is she making the world a more equal place when she is a tyrant queen? Now, yes, it is true, she did free Slavers Bay. She broke the chains. Yes, I agree with that. And like I said, the character has many shades of grey, which is what makes her so interesting. It makes her so real, because that's the way real people are. If you look at the founding fathers of America, for example, they wrote the American Constitution, which is seen throughout the world as a bastion of equality and liberty. But at the same time, many of them owned slaves. So, were they good or bad? Well, it's not black and white. It's complex. And that's the way Dany is. And to only see the good things about her and ignore the bad is incredibly blind, is incredibly hypocritical. Anyway, Jessica goes on. She's championed women, put those who threatened her based on her gender in their place, and generally kicked ass for years now. Yeah, it may be true that there may be some people in her past who have judged her because she's female, but they're more likely to have judged her because she was young and inexperienced. And Game of Thrones is filled with a lot of powerful female characters. It's not like she's the only one. But anyway, let's continue. There have also been some pretty great feminist quotes from Daenerys during Game of Thrones. And we'll get to those feminist quotes in a minute, because a lot of them contradict what the author of this article is saying, and a lot of them, I don't know why you would consider them feminist, but we'll get to that in a minute. She goes on to say, "This character does not deserve to be remembered as anything other than a champion," and these quotes prove it. Yes, a champion obsessed with sitting on the Iron Throne, willing to kill tens of thousands of people to get there. That's your hero. That's who she is. That's who she has always been. This isn't something that just popped up last episode. It's the way she's been from the start. Have you watched the fucking TV show? She could have remained in Meereen and Slavers Bay and ruled there for the rest of her life. She could have made it a paradise for her subjects, the people she freed. But instead, she took 2 invading armies across the ocean to Westeros to engage in warfare and slaughter tens of thousands of people just so she could sit on the Iron Throne. She is obsessed with it. She is willing to do anything to get there. That is not a hero. Once again, I'm not saying she's evil, but I am saying she is a grey character. It amazes me that people can't see that. Anyway, let's continue. Dany has proven her feminism not just as a powerful female leader, but also as someone who has tried to make everyone feel as though they are equal. Okay, first of all, how exactly is she a feminist? I don't remember her not shaving her armpits or going on slut walks. Maybe I missed that episode. I don't know. Does she spend a lot of time on Twitter using the hashtag #KillAllMen? I'm just curious. What exactly makes her a feminist? She doesn't have the green or pink hair, that's for sure. But anyway, the other part I find amusing about this sentence is she makes everyone feel as though they are equal. Yeah. Did you miss the fact that she is a fucking queen? Did you miss that part? A queen who has murdered people for not bending the knee. How exactly is that making them feel equal? Definitely not equal to her. Jessica, who wrote this article, does not seem to do logic very well. It's astounding. Anyway, let's continue. There is a reason she has the name Breaker of Chains. Dany spent most of the first portion of the show freeing slaves and punishing masters who refused to change their ways. Yes, that is true. Like I said, she is a grey character. She has done good things and she has done bad things in the past. That's what makes her interesting. She goes on to say, she also gave all of her soldiers and her right-hand woman, Missandei, a choice on whether they wanted to stand by her side or not. Yep, she did. That's true. She's not giving the people of Westeros a choice, though, is she? She didn't turn up with her invading armies and say, hey guys, do you want me to be your ruler or not? If you don't want me to be the ruler of Westeros, I'm happy to go back to Meereen and rule there. Just so you know. No, she didn't do that, did she? No, she burnt those who didn't want her as a ruler. She slaughtered them by the tens of thousands. You forgot that bit somehow. She goes on to say, while Dany has always treated those who fight for her like friends and not people who are lower than her, yep, she also isn't afraid to assert herself or act like a true leader, and that's how she's gotten as far as she has. Yeah, that's right. It's her self-confidence in being a leader. It has nothing to do with the 3 fully grown dragons or the tens of thousands of male soldiers who follow her. Absolutely nothing to do with that. It's all to do with her confidence and the fact that she's got a vagina and apparently is a feminist. Yeah, that's what's got her there. No matter how the show ends, Daenerys will always be the feminist greatest of all time of Westeros in my eyes. Of Westeros? Not Essos? I could understand that maybe the people of Essos, of Slavers Bay that is, would consider her the greatest of all times because she freed them from slavery, right? But Westeros? Really? She invaded with 2 large armies and 3 dragons and slaughtered people in the tens of thousands. I guess that passes as the feminist greatest of all time now. Strange. Here are some feminist quotes from Daenerys in Game of Thrones that will leave you feeling empowered. Oh, leave us feeling empowered. That's interesting. Let's see what the first one is. I'm wondering if it's going to leave me feeling empowered. And it should, because after all, feminism is for both men and women, right? It's just about equality. So as a male, it should leave me feeling empowered as well. So the first one is, all men must die, but we are not men. How empowering. I mean, that is so empowering. I guess the only way women can feel empowered is not only by tearing men down, but by having them killed. Because, feminism is just equality, right? Yep. So she explains this. This is when Daenerys and Missandei really bond, and when Dany delivers this badass quote that should go down in history books. So it's the fact that she's bonding with a female, and she's talking about killing men. That's historic and a feminist quote. Okay, I think we see where the author's ideology has led her. Not down the road of equality, that's for sure. Next. I will answer injustice with justice. Okay, that's an inspirational quote, but what exactly makes it feminist, I wonder? Especially considering this just followed Kill All Men. Makes me think that your brand of feminism isn't exactly equality-based, so I'm not exactly sure what your form of justice would be, but let's see how she explains it. This quote is an example of the way Daenerys tries to rule, by giving people options instead of trying to control them completely. Yeah, unless they're of a foreign land and she's invading. And then she doesn't give them options at all. She just slaughters them and burns them with her dragons. But yeah, if you ignore that, then yeah, that's totally true. Except when she took control of the Dothraki and didn't give them the option of freedom, but instead brought them over to Westeros to be slaughtered in the tens of thousands. Yeah, just ignore that. Just ignore that, and we'll be okay. Yeah, totally justice based. Definitely not anything to do with an entitled princess wanting to rule the world. Actually, come to think of it, that would mean Daenerys is a feminist icon. Next. 3. Woman, is that meant to insult me? I would return the slap if I took you for a man. Yeah, now I can understand how feminists might like this particular quote. And her response is, this is a seriously epic comeback. Yep. Now, I could understand a feminist getting behind this quote, except that feminists are just as likely to judge a man based on the fact that he's male. So you can't tell us in one breath that we shouldn't judge females based on their gender while you go around judging men based on theirs. That's just a little bit hypocritical, don't you think? Let's go on to quote number 4. It seems to me that a queen who trusts no one is as foolish as a queen who trusts everyone. Yeah, that quote makes sense to me. I think it's a good quote, but I'm not exactly sure how it's feminist. Anyway, let's see what she says. Daenerys shows her full strength by knowing she has to put her trust in some people to help her lead. Yep, okay. How is that a feminist quote, though? I'm not exactly sure how that is a feminist quote. Anyway, on to the next one. 5. I am not your little princess. No, but she is an entitled princess, isn't she? You can't escape that. You can't escape the fact that she is entitled, that she thinks that she is owed the Iron Throne. And yes, I know if we exclude Jon, then it is technically her birthright from a legal point of view. But from, like I said, from a moral point of view, she is willing to commit acts of evil to get there. And that does not make her a pure white, good character. But let's read Jessica's explanation for that quote. You really can't go wrong with this one, where Daenerys has to put everyone who doubts her in their place. Yeah, but she's made mistakes along the way, hasn't she? Surely a good leader should listen to those who question her or doubt her or him. Sometimes people doubt leaders for good reason. Number 6. I am no ordinary woman. My dreams come true. Okay, I don't know how that's empowering to ordinary women. It's basically saying that unlike ordinary women, her dreams come true. So she's saying ordinary women's dreams don't come true. How is that empowering to your average woman? Well, I guess Jessica's about to tell us, aren't you, Jessica? Let's see what she says. Dany is super confident that she can get anything she wants. And she should be, yes. Get anything she wants at any cost. That does not make her a good person. That makes her entitled. If it was a male character who was determined to get anything he wants at any cost, you would be calling that toxic masculinity. You would be saying that is patriarchy. You would be saying that's the oppression of women. But when it's a female character doing exactly the same thing, suddenly it's empowering, and the woman's entitled to it because she's a woman, and she's a feminist icon, which I think really describes what feminism is supporting. Self-entitled women. Number 7. I will not lie with you, and I will bear no children for you, or anyone else. And Jessica explains this as, she isn't afraid to stand up for herself, and she refuses to be a pawn used for a man's pleasure. Yep. But she's willing to use many, many men as pawns, though, isn't she? She's willing to use tens of thousands of male soldiers and send them to their deaths so she can sit on the Iron Throne for her pleasure. That's perfectly okay. Okay, number 8. You promised me. My sword is yours. My life is yours. This is what I command. What was it Jessica said earlier? Let's have a look. While Dany has always treated those who fight for her like friends and not people who are lower than her. Yeah. It sounds like it, doesn't it? So let's see how Jessica explains that. Dany is never afraid to demand what she deserves, and this quote shows that. Yeah, it does. It shows that she is willing to demand what she thinks she deserves because she is literally an entitled princess. Well, queen, but you get the pun. Next. 9. I said farewell to a man who loves me, a man I thought I cared for, and I felt nothing, just impatient to get on with it. And Jessica explains this as, Dany shows that she does not need a man to get where she needs to go. Really? She doesn't need a man to get where she needs to go. No, just 2 or 3 armies of men to get where she needs to go. And a couple of dragons as well. But it's all about her feminist determination, right? That's the only thing that's got her there. Not the tens of thousands of male soldiers or the dragons. Yeah, it's good to know that's all it takes. Number 10. Don't ever presume to touch me again or speak my name. And Jessica explains this. When Daenerys knows she has been wronged, she isn't afraid to push back hard. Okay. How is that a feminist quote, though? I'm not exactly sure how that's specific to feminism. Anyway, number 11. I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel. She knows she's powerful enough to do more than just something small. But yeah, because of her 3 dragons and her armies. Do you think she would have got as far as she did if it wasn't for the 3 dragons? Even when they were small, they were still a huge asset to her. Do you think she could have amassed the huge armies and conquered Slaver's Bay without the dragons? I haven't even seen the dragons mentioned once in this article. It's like they don't exist. It's like Daenerys is flying around in the air and killing tens of thousands with her fiery breath, all by herself. Number 12. If I look back, I am lost. Okay, how is this a feminist quote? I'm not exactly sure how this is a feminist quote. Okay, explain it to us, Jessica. The Mother of Dragons knows that the only way to move forward is to leave the past behind. Yep, but now I think that's good advice. I'm just not exactly sure how it's a feminist quote. Is any quote which is good now a feminist quote? I'm just curious. Is that the rules? Any quote which is good is now feminist, and any quote which is bad is now anti-feminist or Nazi or whatever? Is that the new rules? I'm just curious. I'm sure Bustle's got an article about it somewhere, but I can't be fucked looking it up. Number 13. I will take what is mine with fire and blood. Yeah, that doesn't sound like a case of entitlement, does it? That doesn't sound like a bloodthirsty tyrant who's willing to do whatever it takes to sit on the Iron Throne. No, I don't know how the writers of the last episode of Game of Thrones could have done that to Dany, could have changed her in such a way to make her into such a bloodthirsty tyrant. How could they do that when clearly she is just all about peace and love and moonlight walks on the beach, right? That's all she's ever been about, not fire and blood and death and slaughter. No, clearly they've mischaracterized this poor innocent woman. But Jessica's about to explain this quote to us. Again, she's never afraid to go after what she wants in a fierce way. Yes, that's true. She isn't afraid. And she's willing to kill anyone in her way to get there. That's the point. That's the point of the character. That's why she is not a pure white good character. That's why she's a grey character. That's why she's faulty. That's why she's flawed. That's why she's an interesting counter to Jon Snow, because Jon Snow has no interest in ruling in positions of power, whereas Daenerys has been obsessed with it from the very start. How can you not see all this? It amazes me. Anyway, on to 14. 14. The next time you raise a hand to me will be the last time you have hands. Yes, and she's saying that to her brother. If her brother had have hit her again and he had his hands cut off, who do you think would be cutting off his hands? Do you think Dany would be doing it herself? Or do you think she would have a man do it? Do you think maybe Khal Drogo would do it? I don't know. That's an interesting question, isn't it? And who is it that killed her brother? I can't seem to remember. It's a hard one to remember that. I'm sure Dany did it herself because she doesn't need a man to do anything for her, right? Anyway, Jessica explains this quote as, Daenerys is not here for anyone's shit. Okay, fair enough. But the fact that she needs Khal Drogo to cut off her brother's hands would suggest that she does need a man, doesn't it? Next. 15. I will do what queens do. I will rule. Yeah, because you're an entitled princess. Like I said before, no wonder she is a feminist icon, because she is a fucking entitled princess who thinks she is owed leadership simply because of who she is. The only thing that would contradict what I just said there is Dany has worked hard for it and grown and evolved as she's gone along, but she still thought right from the start that she is entitled to rule, despite that. Anyway, Jessica explains this to us. She never loses confidence in her ability to be a leader. Really? Have you watched the show? Have you read the books? There are numerous times that she questions herself. That's what makes the character so interesting. She has doubt at numerous points, which she has to overcome, and often rely on her advisors to give her advice, despite the fact that she apparently doesn't need a man to get where she needs to go. Right? Fucking read the books or watch the TV show, for fuck's sake. 16. I value your advice, but if you ever question me in front of strangers again, you'll be advising someone else. Is that understood? Yeah. What was it Jessica, the author of this article, said before? Let's have a look at that once again. While Dany has always treated those who fight for her like friends and not people who are lower than her. Yes, she definitely doesn't treat them like people who are lower than her. She definitely doesn't constantly tell them that she's a queen, which is entitled to rule, and it's her birthright. No, not at all. She treats them as equals, obviously. And Jessica explains this quote to us by saying, she also always puts people in their place. She's a strong leader. Yes, and that's how you treat people like equals. You apparently put them in their place, right? Yep. 17. My reign has just begun. So that's a feminist quote, is it? If that's a feminist quote, then I could easily conclude that feminism isn't about equality, is it? It's about ruling. And Jessica explains this, and she isn't going anywhere. Well, that's not true, is it? It's quite possible she is going to be killed in the last episode. In fact, I cannot see her sitting on the Iron Throne after the second last episode. I just can't see that as a possibility. So I guess she's going to die. That would be the logical conclusion. Like I said at the start, hopefully I've got this video up before the final episode. If not, if I happen to get it up afterwards, then what I'm saying now could obviously be completely wrong. But I think it's a pretty safe bet that she is going to die the last episode. And it's probably a fitting ending to someone who has believed right from the start that they are entitled to the throne and is willing to do anything to get there. It would seem in many ways a little unjust for her to actually end up getting what she wants. That doesn't seem to be the overall message of the books. But, what do I know? I'm sure some feminist who writes for Bustle has a much better idea because, vagina and you go girl, right? Yeah. Hello again, YouTube. Now, for the end part of my video, I originally recorded something like 20 additional minutes where I was talking about another article, but I haven't had time to edit that, let alone do all the overlays and everything like that, because I want to get this video up 24 hours before the final episode. So I thought instead I'd quickly give my predictions for the final episode and what might happen. Now I will give a spoiler warning just in case I'm right about anything, so if you want to go into the final episode without any possibility of anything being spoiled, please come back and watch this afterwards. But chances are I'm going to get everything wrong anyway. But I will explain not only what I think will happen, but why I think it will happen as well. Okay, so the first prediction is that Arya will try to kill Daenerys. And I have two reasons for thinking this. The first one is, the second last episode, we saw a lot of Arya's perspective on the ground, seeing the damage and the devastation that Dany did on her dragon. Now, obviously, this could be used just as a plot device to really show the audience how devastating it was. So it allowed us to experience that devastation through the eyes of a known character as opposed to just a group of strangers. But the fact that Arya formed that connection to the mother and the young child, and the mother saved Arya's life and she watched them get slaughtered the way they did, that makes it personal for Arya. And I can't imagine that Arya isn't going to want revenge for that, as well as the rest of the city, obviously. So the fact that we saw Arya form that bond with those two characters, and it's an emotional connection, and Arya's nature is that, she's going to want revenge, that makes me think that she's going to want to kill Daenerys in the final episode. But like I said, there's two reasons, and the second reason really supports the first one. And that is a prophecy. The second one is a prophecy which we heard in Series 2, as well as Book 2, for those of you who haven't read the books. And the prophecy goes, "The glass candles are burning, soon comes the pale mare, and after the others, Kraken and Dark Flame, Lion and Griffin, the Sun's Son, and the Mummer's Dragon. Trust none of them. Remember the Undying, beware the perfumed Seneschal." Well, a lot of the things mentioned here relate to things that happen in the books, or characters that appear in the books that don't appear in the show. In case you haven't read the books, a lot of material was cut from the books for the show, which is perfectly understandable. To cover every character and every plot line in the books, it would have to go for 20 seasons. So, for example, Griffin is a character in the book. Well, the Griffin is a symbol of a character in the book, I should say. And the book also goes into glass candles, although we haven't gone too deeply into them yet. I'm hoping that George will expand on them in the next 2 books. But the interesting point is soon comes the pale mare. Now, in the books, the pale mare is a disease. It's dysentery, which makes its way through one of the armies outside Marine. But what's interesting about the term pale mare is that final shot of Arya in the second last episode, where a horse comes out of the smoke. It's a pale mare, and she gets on it and rides off. So I think the whole dysentery thing was just a red herring from George, which is what he likes to do in his books, especially when it concerns prophecy. He'll make a prophecy somewhere in the book, and then he'll put up a whole heap of red herrings, which will lead the reader in the wrong direction. So, yeah, I think Arya might be the pale mare. I think it's too much of a coincidence that she just happened to get on a pale horse right at the end after watching the devastation in the city. But like I said, I could be wrong. So, my second prediction, as I just said previously, Arya will try to kill Daenerys, and I think she will fail. I think she will, in turn, be killed herself. And the reason I think this is it's just too much for Arya to kill both Daenerys and the Night King. I think that would really piss off fans. And I think possibly the reason why the showrunners had Arya kill the Night King, why they chose her, is because they knew that she would fail to kill Daenerys. So it's like a consolation prize, I guess. And of course, Arya has been dancing with the God of Death throughout the entire series. So I guess it would be fitting in a way that she would end up dying at the end. And her death would be the straw that broke the camel's back as far as Jon and Dany go. Not that I think Jon really needs another reason to turn on Dany at this moment after the devastation of King's Landing. I think that's enough reason for anyone to turn on Dany, but just in case he needs that final motivation, the death of Arya would be enough to make him turn on Dany. There'd be no going back after that. Which leads me to my third prediction, that Jon will in fact kill Dany. And it's probably going to be some big epic showdown which involves a dragon. Obviously I don't know all the details, but I'm sure it's going to be quite interesting if it goes down this particular way. Which leads me to my next prediction, that Jon will sit the Iron Throne, but he'll turn it down and head north. So he will be ruler in name, but he'll go beyond the wall and live a happy life in solitude away from politics and all the bullshit. I think Jon will get a happy ending that way. So that leads me to my last prediction, and that is who will actually sit the Iron Throne in Jon's place. And I think the logical answer would be Tyrion. Now, I think this for a number of reasons. It would be a logical conclusion to his journey, because when we saw him at the start, he was a drunk womanizer who spent all his time blind drunk going to brothels. And, the world looked down on him both literally and figuratively. And throughout the series, he's shown his intelligence, and he's shown that he can be a good leader. Well, not that he's actually been in a position of leadership, but he's been the advisor to numerous leaders, and I think it would be fitting for him to rule in Jon's place, in Jon's name, as Jon's hand. There's also another possible reason why I think Tyrion might sit on the Iron Throne at the end, and that is if, for those of you who have read the books, you probably know this, but Tyrion is a possible secret Targaryen. The Mad King, which was Dany's father and Jon's grandfather, had a thing for Tyrion's mother, and there is an implication that maybe he had his way with her at a certain time, which would kind of add up to to Tyrion's birth if we look at the timescale. And of course, this would explain why Tyrion's father, Tywin, hated the Mad King so much, and also looked down on Tyrion because he suspected that Tyrion might not actually be his real son. Now, obviously, the TV show hasn't gone into this, so maybe it's not an actual thing in the books, or maybe they just thought it was too complex for the TV show, so they've simplified it and worked around it. I'm not sure. But in my opinion, I think Tyrion would be the logical person to sit the throne at the end. Now, I will throw in one bonus prediction, but I think this one's pretty obvious, and that is Sansa will rule the North. I don't expect to get any points if I get that one right because it's so fucking obvious. But it will be interesting to see how many of the others I get correct. I guess we'll know in about 24 hours.